announcement, Sunshine.
Oh.
If you have any announcement.
So the only.
Yes.
Yes.
Not that it matters. But,
Yes.
so next week is the
Professional Administration Day.
Professional Administration Day. So Wendy has cards for a bunch of administrators and chocolates, and she's going upstairs after this to like kind of try to get them out. And so if anyone wants to go along.
It's fun, and they really appreciate it. So it'd be fun to have the team come up with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And if anyone from Skype wants to come, there's like a computer up there.
He'll do it.
PLT? Or maybe not at this time?
Just an announcement, the PLT is working on coming up with an FTE formula and some strategies for next year. If people have ideas about alternative ways of distributing building and placements, you can certainly let your PLT rep know, because the team this year is really trying to be open at the top and that there could be a variety of ways of fulfilling the needs of our schools and making work as a school psychologist feel successful and equitable.
Thank you. We do have our ITOD here for the presentation. SCA, do you have any announcements?
We do.
Okay. 2 minutes. Go.
One is today was Red Shirt Day, and it's in support of the other school districts around the country that are fighting for more equitable pay and different things like that. So I'm going to be handing this around. It is it's a T-shirt request form. So if you want one, you can just put a check by which size you want, or maybe write your name in there, and then we'll send in the request, and hopefully we'll get shirts. I think that's why they gave us this. So maybe pass it around the inside and then pass it around the outside.
The shirts you're wearing?
What kind of shirt?
I don't know if they've changed the design or not, but it might be this shirt that I am wearing.
I already have one.
So
I
if
just
you already
wanna say
have
this
one
is my
and
red
you don't
shirt.
want it, then please don't write your name down.
Everybody else get one. Free.
Huh?
Yeah.
I was telling everybody else to get one. That's what we wear like we were to go on strike.
Yeah, we're actually going to go possibly, hopefully we don't go on strike, but if we have to go on strike, that will be the start of next year, and then you'll be walking around with your schools or
So they're
whatever.
free?
Yeah, and when they hand them all out at
It's
the
a-
beginning of the
it's
year,
a
they never
bargaining
have the
year.
good sizes, so.
Because
take
it
advantage
is
now.
a bargaining year, correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to elect new reps. Sorry, let's take a little more in 2 minutes. We need to elect new reps for the next school year, because they want to have the reps in place for the start of next school year. We usually do our reps last minute at the beginning of September, but we actually need to get them done, I think, by May. So, does anyone want to be a union rep? Please raise your hands. It's a great opportunity to have a say, Vaughn does. It's a great opportunity to have a say on the bargaining, like what we are going to be prioritizing for bargaining. Having a voice as a school psychologist is really important. They often neglect the ESAs, so.
Not
Anybody?
with Vaughn there.
Huh?
Not with Vaughn there.
Yeah. True, Vaughn does an excellent job.
Do you want to remind everybody how many reps and how many alternates we need to have?
We need to have 2 reps, 3 reps, 3 reps and 3 alternates. Right now it's me, Heather, and Vaughn. Come on, guys.
Gordon and I
You're the
are
alternate.
strongly in the alternate.
Actually. And I don't know if we have a 3rd alternate or not, but.
Can we move to elect you guys by acclamation? Re-elect?
Heather, do you want to do another year of it?
If anyone wants my position, they can take it. If no one wants it.
She will do her duty as a school psychologist for our school psychology team if needed, but would really appreciate if somebody else might be interested.
So what if we vote during next month's meeting to give people time to consider?
It's
don't
at the
have a
beginning of the
meeting
month,
next-
so it should be sufficient time.
Okay,
Yeah, we do.
We have a baby.
okay,
Vaughn said yes.
yeah, because we meet the second Monday of the month, right? So, assuming there's no vacation. Okay. All right. It happens.
She's funny.
Okay, yeah, so there we go. We need to do AR elections.
Thank
then
you.
I think
You've given
that's it.
A lot to digest. We'll process it. And now,
Thanks for the mockery. Actually, I'm gonna hand this around too. Deal. Okay, executive director's report. I think this can be valuable for you to see like who's been represented by ARs and union reps for different things and what's going on, just if you're interested in how the union is playing a role in supporting its members. If you don't care, just pass it on. But just thought you might be interested.
Thank you, Nicole. Now we have Kay here. Or what you're about.
Hi, so I'm Kay Cole Leary, although I always say the computer and my mother call me that are caused by a hearing loss are not due to an issue with brain processes. Go ahead. Okay. Their learning issues are secondary delays that are caused by a child's incomplete access to speech and language that's occurring around them. This is especially true when you consider how much meaning is carried by soft speech sounds and how often someone's talking to the student from outside of their listening bubble, which is a range of about 3 to 6 feet. Before we go ahead, I want to just say that when I say a child with hearing loss, there are different kinds of hearing loss. There's bilateral, which is what you think of when you think of someone who's deaf or hard of hearing. They may wear hearing aids or cochlear implant. It may be conductive, which means the middle ear is involved, and that can come and go, it can fluctuate. And it may be unilateral, and research has shown that students with a unilateral or one-sided hearing loss have many of the same impacts on their learning ability as kids with a bilateral hearing loss. So just keeping that in mind. Okay, so this representation, go ahead. Okay, this is a representation of an audiogram. It's not like the ones that the doctors give, but it shows where familiar sounds and speech sounds are on the audiogram. Go ahead. The numbers across the top talk about the frequency from the frequency of the sound. The smaller numbers on the left are lower tones, and the larger numbers to the right are higher pitched sounds. Go ahead. The numbers along the side, okay, are the volume. They measure the volume of the sound. The smaller numbers at the top are the less intense sounds, and the larger numbers toward the bottom are louder sounds. Go ahead. So one can think of the audiogram in 4 quadrants, okay? That quadrant being quieter low-pitched sounds, up here, quieter high-pitched sounds, then down here, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm trying to do 4 things at one time.
Okay.
Never mind.
Louder, low-pitched sounds, go ahead. And over here, the louder, high-pitched sounds, go ahead. The sounds of speech, you can see, are right across the range of frequencies, but in the middle as far as volume goes. Go ahead. Except for these high-pitched sounds. They're very quiet and they're very high frequency. Okay. I'm going to just go through kind of at a pace because it's the next one kind of has several.
We're fine. I think we fixed it.
So this is what a hearing loss might look like on an audiogram. Go ahead. This is normal hearing up here. Go ahead. Okay. And hearing aids and cochlear implants are designed to amplify each separate frequency to bring the student's hearing up into the normal range. Okay. One more. Okay. But distance degrades sound proportionally. The sound energy gets lost the farther away you are as it travels through space. And competing noise can mask sound. So the quieter sounds of speech, those can really easily get lost for a student with a hearing impairment. Go ahead. There's a difference between hearing and understanding. Okay, go ahead. This story will illustrate the challenges of listening with fragmented hearing. One upon a dime, a itty mow wende via an unry mow. The unry mow lit in a veal. He was lad as she a city friend. The oomai ran about a veal and lay in the arm. Okay, anybody know what story that is? Good, you got it, okay. This level of missing and misheard bits and pieces of speech is typically what a child with hearing loss faces, even one with optimally fit hearing aids or a CI, when they're in a less than ideal auditory environment. So somebody guessed that this is about mouse. If I told you this is the story of the country mouse and the city mouse, it might give you some more information toward that. But like a child with hearing loss, if you've never heard the story before, or if you had no knowledge about the country, or if you couldn't even imagine mice as characters in a story, it would probably be very difficult to understand what this was about and what happened. Unknown vocabulary, listening at a distance, along with the noise of an active classroom combine to make accessing what is said during instruction a considerable challenge. Go ahead. So again, why involve a teacher of the deaf? Go ahead. First of all, it's the law. Go ahead.
I just told somebody that as a reason for something earlier.
So the ADA specifies, it makes it clear that students with hearing loss have a legal right to equal opportunity to obtain the same results or reach the same level of achievement as their peers without hearing loss. Go ahead. And again. Most students also need their unique learning issues specific to hearing loss to be directly assessed by a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing. Go ahead. At a minimum, auxiliary aids such as an FM or a DM system that bring the speaker's voice directly to the student's ear, or services which supports students and their teachers, or accommodations like preferential seating, they're often appropriate. When an IEP team determines that the least restrictive environment is in the student's neighborhood school rather than in this specialized program for the deaf and hard of hearing, then the itinerant teacher becomes the answer. Go ahead. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. And keep going. Okay. So aside from the law, or actually the reason for the law, is that support from a deaf ed specialist often is needed to best meet the needs of students with hearing loss. At the heart of hearing loss is the impact it has on language development. As you may know, kids with typical hearing begin perceiving pitch, stress, and rhythm of speech and language in utero. And babies hear the language that's directed at them and the language that's going on around them from the moment that they're born. Babies with hearing loss don't. Go ahead. Children need to be exposed to words hundreds of times before they master them, and this is a challenge for students with hearing loss because so many of those exposures naturally happen in that peripheral world, overheard, and not in conversations directed specifically to them. Go ahead. The same issues factor into developing syntax. Remember those speech sounds on the audiogram? Okay, if the child does not hear the difference when a speaker says, "My cats play in our yard," versus "my cat plays in our yard," okay, the rules regarding plurals are going to be hard to learn. The same is true with past tense. "I walk in the park every day," versus "I walked in the park every day." That t sound is very quiet and kids get lost. And possessives, "Bob apples" versus "Bob's apples." And there are lots of other grammatical forms that depend on those high-pitched, quiet sounds to give the meaning. And the kids with hearing loss don't learn those naturally. Go ahead. And one more. So these listening challenges start with that simple discrimination of sounds like bat, pat, mat. They look the same on the lip. They sound very similar, but the meaning changes. Or mush, muss, mutt, mud. Those sounds can get lost, and the meaning then is obscured. And they end up impacting comprehension of conversation and comprehension of instruction. And then ultimately, it impacts their self-esteem and the fulfillment of their life's potential if they don't feel like they can move ahead in life. Go ahead. Not hearing and understanding social interactions can cause students with hearing loss to feel rejected by their peers, who after all are just kids who don't understand why the child with hearing loss acts so differently. Additionally, missing comments that people make around them that shed light on internal dialogue and problem solving can keep students with hearing loss from understanding that other people actually have their own thoughts and feelings, their own emotions and reactions. Skills with vocabulary and comprehension of complex syntax predict theory of mind skills. And so children who aren't able to understand those complex syntactic forms have a hard time understanding how their own thoughts and beliefs are different from people around them. And being slow to develop theory of mind abilities is a probable source of reading delays, starting with issues like misunderstanding preschool storybooks, like how Little Red Riding Hood doesn't know that that's the wolf in the bed. The reader can see it's a wolf. Why can't Little Red Riding Hood see that it's the wolf? And in later grades, going on to trouble understanding multiple points of view of different characters within reading. Go ahead.
That's what I get for trying to multitask, sorry.
And one more. Okay. So not having a well-developed theory of mind, students with hearing loss struggle to understand other people's points of view in discussions and in writings. They have a hard time analyzing events in other countries and other times and other cultures, like slavery, genocide, or racism becomes even harder for those kids to understand. Okay? Social delays snowball from a young age. Toddlers and preschoolers with hearing loss struggle to act appropriately. with other kids, to interact appropriately. And so those other little kids, they just kind of avoid them. They don't want to be around them because they don't act normal. And so then the kids with hearing loss don't get as many chances to learn and develop social skills, and then the delays intensify. School-aged children with hearing loss often prefer just to be alone or the company of adults, because the adults will accommodate the child's social differences, and the adults will do the work to repair any communication breakdowns that happen. Go ahead. Effort is the exertion of physical or mental power. Listening effort refers to the energy that the brain uses to understand speech. Needing to constantly fill in missing acoustic information and struggling to make sense of words that are misheard or unknown burns up actual physical energy. If you think of a time that you've tried to have a meaningful conversation in a noisy restaurant or a noisy party, or a time that you were listening for a stretch of time to people speaking a language that you only sort of understand, you probably became tired more quickly than usual. And this mental exhaustion is what a child with a hearing loss faces every day in school. Go ahead. Okay, students with hearing loss need direct instruction in the skills that they need to advocate for themselves and the skills that they need to communicate successfully with their peers. Often, these kids become withdrawn or isolated, or they act out with the frustration of not understanding and not being understood, so then it's a behavior issue. Okay? Speakers, make sure I'm in the right place, yep. Speakers at a distance or in a large group or rapid conversational exchanges in a small group create really insurmountable problems for a student with hearing loss. The more noise there is, the more difficult it is for a student with hearing loss to sort out the message from the background noise. This room you might think is really quiet because you're all really being polite and not having conversations while I'm talking. But if you just take a second and listen, there's a really loud fan blowing, and that would be masking some of the sounds of my speech to a student with hearing loss. Even if a child is able to perform well in a quiet setting, they might not be able to in a classroom setting that is typically noisy with fast-paced peer-to-peer conversations and teachers that walk and move around the classroom. Those factors can cause significant listening challenges. Okay. Early reading and writing skill development is hampered when a student can't hear well enough to differentiate the element of phonics. Frequent ear infections, like I said, can cause a fluctuating conductive loss, which can negatively impact a child's academic development, even if it happened in early childhood or when they were toddlers, because then their language and their brains weren't developing normally. It can still have a residual impact on hearing. Okay? And one more?
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, yes?
Are we gonna get a copy of this PowerPoint?
For $4.
I thought it was $5. Oh, for the extra $1, you can have a copy of my Word document. Yes, we can make it available. The notes are on the PowerPoint, but I don't know if the copy that you have the notes on the PowerPoint.
We can confirm, make sure.
Okay, and if not, I can just send the Word document too, and you guys can access it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, totally welcome to it. Okay, even a mild hearing loss, or like I said, a unilateral hearing loss, reduces the ability to overhear or benefit from incidental language learning. And that's how most vocabulary and most social skills are learned. Hearing devices don't perfectly restore typical hearing. It's very different than putting on glasses and all of a sudden you can see 20/20. It's not as clear as that. Hearing loss causes a barrier to accessing teacher instruction and peer-to-peer communication, especially in the classroom where there's background noise and the teacher is more than 3 feet away. Okay? Low background noise, like that fan in the environment, can interfere with speech understanding. Children with hearing loss have to work harder to listen, using more of their cognitive resources, and so then that leaves fewer of their resources available to learn the content that they're supposed to be getting out of what they're listening to. And so that learning slows down and can be misunderstood as a learning disability when it's not the same as a typical learning disability. In early grades, when students are learning to read and write, the student with hearing loss might be able to progress within normal student expectations. But at that switch at about 3rd grade, when you start reading to learn and writing to show what you've learned, then the gaps and challenges really become more apparent. Without understanding and support, the student's self-concept can plummet and they'll feel inadequate or incapable. Okay. So, ITOD support. What do we have? There are over 5,300 students in our district. I think that's about the right number. There are about 500 students that the audiologists have identified as having some kind of hearing loss. A lot of that is that conductive loss. Currently, we have 3 ITODs, myself and 2 partners, and we're serving about 35 kids on IEPs and just a few kids with 504 plans. Hearing loss kids make up a really low incidence population, but they're also really underserved. Statistically, we should have about closer to 50 kids on our radar. And so there are kids out there that we could be helping that we don't know about. Go ahead. So gen ed teachers, special ed teachers, administrators, SLPs, audiologists, and even psychologists don't generally have the knowledge base to know what red flags to look for beyond the most obvious. I mean, if you see a kid with a cochlear implant or hearing aid and they're failing in class, that's pretty obvious, but there are other more subtle things. Unnoticed lack of access to listening and language has a cascading and complex impact on kids in the classroom. Go ahead. And one more. So what do we have to offer? There are a range of checklists and assessments that are available, focusing on specific aspects of the impacts of hearing loss. And we ITODs can determine which one or ones will provide the best picture of a student's strengths and challenges. Go ahead. We also look at assessment results with a different lens than SLPs or special ed teachers or even audiologists. We as a team really feel like we should be involved to some degree with assessments for any kid with hearing loss, past or present, who's come to the attention of a student intervention team or is having an evaluation. Because, I mean, if they're out there and there's no concern about them, there's really no concern. But if they're, up for a sit or they're having an evaluation, we should be a part of that team in some way or another. Go ahead. So what can we do? One more. We can, I'm sorry, leave it up there, it's fine. We can make presentations to staff or students explaining hearing loss, explaining the amplification systems, and explaining what educational supports we have. Also, after observing and working with students and interviewing their parents and interviewing their teachers, we can share a menu of modifications and accommodations that are commonly used for kids with hearing loss on their IEPs or their 504 plans. Go ahead. So students with hearing loss might need direct or indirect support with one or more of these specialized areas of support. And we'll just go through them. Communication skills, understanding ears and hearing, understanding their listening technology, their social behavior, independence skills, self-advocacy skills, future planning and understanding the law. This is really important for high school kids. And we can also provide direct support for reading, writing, math goals on a student's IEP, if the IEP team deems that appropriate. And we can share techniques with teachers how to better address a student's need for visual access to information. Okay, the team approach. We're just one part of the team. The psychologists, you guys assess cognitive, emotional behavior, adaptive functioning issues. The speech therapist looks at speech and language issues. The special education teacher addresses academic and behavior issues. The audiologist evaluates and monitors hearing loss, supports technology, and works to habilitate auditory skills. Itinerant teachers, we address those areas of need impacted by hearing loss and support the students in improving their performance using knowledge specific to the learning needs of students with hearing loss. Go ahead. So if you have a student who has one or two of the following red flags or more, and hearing loss is known to be or suspected to be involved, contact us. Okay? We can perform a screening interview with teachers. We can talk to the student, talk to their parents to determine if a more complete evaluation might be warranted. So we'll just go through these. Kids who are frequently off task or 2 steps behind the rest of the class. Kids who follow what other kids are doing, whether it's right or not. Kids who give the wrong answer to questions. Kids who don't either have no friends or few friends their own age, and they really like to talk to adults more than kids. Kids who are frequently daydreaming. Kids who don't follow directions because they didn't hear them. Kids who can read the words but really have trouble explaining or paraphrasing the concepts. And kids with speech problems. Go ahead. So we are out serving students in the schools most of the time. So email is the best way to contact us. Generally, these are the areas of the district that we serve. So I serve mostly Central.
That's right.
Go ahead. Karen Storch serves mostly in the north. And Kim McMaster is mostly in the south end. But
I've seen you.
yeah.
I've seen you in other places.
I've been in other places.
She
yeah.
said
But
mostly.
I said mostly.
Oh, okay.
Mostly. Yeah. But if you contact any of us, we'll know which ITOG serves that specific school. Like, for instance, I am at Fairmont. That's West Seattle.
That's totally
South.
central.
West Seattle. You know. So,
It's
however,
central West Seattle.
However,
Oh.
I'm hiring it this year.
Oh, yay.
So keep Karen and Kim's names. That
was smart, yeah.
Still gonna be here.
That's okay. Central's used to that.
It's April. We have a couple months.
Yeah, you got a couple months of it yet.
Oh.
Are there any questions, or do we have time for questions?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay.
How does sign language
Play into this?
play into this? Do you have to know sign to be an ITOD?
No,
Sign.
because there's a branch of deaf education that's called Listen and Spoken Language. It used to be called Oralism, but it's kind of the philosophy has changed some, so they changed the name. I do know sign language because most of my career has been in the classroom with deaf kids who needed to sign to get to access language. So of all the kids that the 3 of us work with out in the district, there are a couple who are interested in learning sign, but no more than any other 4th or 5th grade kids interested in learning to sign. The kids who sign typically go to the, well, right now, go to the program at Tufts or Roosevelt.
How often are you all being involved in initial evaluations? Looking at your screener, that looks like it could be a lot of other things. So I'm imagining a lot of kids are qualifying and they're like, well, maybe it's something else. Are you guys typically involved in initials?
We're not involved as much as we would like to be because the issue is the hearing loss. So the audiologist should know if there's a hearing loss because kids don't pass their nurses screening at school, then the audiologists go and screen them. They don't do very well, they send them to a clinical audiologist. So those are the kids with the red flags that we should be involved with.
Okay.
At initial, yes, but it's the hearing loss that adds to a different flavor to all of those red flags.
Okay.
So with the FM systems and the communication devices, would those be considered related services?
Those are considered accommodations. Okay, yeah.
So do you get most of your referrals from an audiologist then, or is it that the audiologist tells the nurse or the school Psych and then they refer to you?
We're kind of coming from both directions. We've got our core group that's been, passed along year from year. Our new referrals are coming from, I spoke with the speech therapists about a month ago, did a similar presentation, and a bunch of them popped up and said, I got a kid that this might, My struggle with the audiologists, whom I know and love dearly, is that they don't know the depth of some of these impacts.
Yeah.
If they think if the kid has access to hearing, then they should be doing fine. And if they're not, it's no big deal. And I shouldn't be so flippant about them because they are wonderful and professional people, but they don't see that other layer.
So it's not an automatic, the audiologist notices there's a hearing loss and then you immediately.
Right, and we're trying to convince them that we should at least be in on the initial. We should at least touch base go through a screening and say, oh, you're right, this kid's doing fine, we don't need to touch him again, or not.
Sorry, because we have limited time, so only one more question, Alina.
What about you work with the library offices?
Not really. Yeah, that's a different, yeah.
Please feel free to contact Kate directly or the other ITODs, so if you have any more questions.
And if you remember, that's Kate Cole, you're K with K, Cole with a K, only Peter will call me Karen. So,
thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So we have PLC Share Out.
Technically, there was one other union thing I needed to do. I think we've had quite a few new people join the team. We have, I think, like 7 7 psychologists who are not union members. It's not required, but it's a great thing to do. So I have the papers here. If you're not a union member, if you'd like to be one, then you can come get them. They're just up here. Then I guess you give it back to us.
Are you able to mute the chat? Social
I don't know.
media addiction.
I don't know how to do that.
We don't have anybody here? Yeah. Okay.
You want to stand up there with that? All right.
Where's the rest of our group? I don't know.
Let's see.
Oh.
Stuart posted something on Schoology too.
Oh, hi, I'm part of the group.
Yeah.
Wake up, Rosie.
I know. It's like,
Were you like addicted to your laptop?
I was on my video game. I was playing a video game.
Exhibit A.
I know. Okay, he's gonna pay so much attention. I won't bother blocking him. Here was Uno.
I think I am operating under that assumption that if you see something, you say something. So that is what I am thinking about when I started this group, and I'm grateful to my colleagues here that they kind of joined in on my quest to see what they have seen in their buildings. And so I'm gonna give you some examples of some of the things that I've seen in my middle school. And I guess our goal is just to have everybody kind of thinking about internet/video game addiction, and to maybe start asking some different questions when you're interviewing students and or parents. And then, maybe offer a few little mini fixes. Because it's, I think, a complicated problem. And so the backdrop is that we're living in this super high-tech world where we usually pick up our phones 40 to 50 times a day, and we're looking at our phones more than we do anything else during our day except for sleeping. I mean, that's kind of what the evidence is. So, that's the world that we live in. And, under this umbrella, we could be talking about cyberbullying and social media. There's a lot to talk about, so we kept trying to kind of narrow in on video game addiction. And so I'm talking about the massively multiplayer games online where you've got an avatar and you're playing with people around the world, millions of players worldwide. And I really think that how we live and learn with technology is going to be the question of this century. And I don't think that we have a lot of good curriculum out there just around technology use in general. And I don't think that the answer is to lock it all up and take it away from kids, because I've seen that go kind of horribly wrong. So I noticed this last year, and it would kind of come up in one of two ways. Number one, I would get this email. Miss Burke, I have a student who seems depressed and usually was a first period teacher. Students usually late to class, students often sleeping in class. Student seems kind of spacey and inattentive. And so multiple times I would, get the parents' permission to bring this kid in. I would start talking to them. And we have a lot of kids at Mercer who come from, pretty difficult situations. So it, makes sense for me to start talking about like their home life, and I'm kind of probing that. And everything's fine there, and I'm talking to the parents, and they seem to have a pretty good support system. I'm asking them about, are they being bullied at school? No, everything is pretty good. And then I start, I call it a sleep hygiene question. So I start asking them, what time do you go to bed? Because your teacher says that you're sleeping in class. And then it just comes out, like they will tell me, well, I have this new game and I'm playing it until 1 o'clock in the morning because, if your guild is on a quest and those people live in China and it's really hard to get to sleep. So they will babble on and tell me all about it. And I really see it as more of a parenting issue because it's pretty difficult, and I tried this, to kind of put these kids on some kind of incentive plan around reducing the amount that they're playing, and that doesn't work as well. But I think that I have had a little bit of success. I mean, just for starters, talking to parents about just considering taking consoles out of bedrooms and having, a tech-free bedroom, I think is super important. And you'd be amazed at how many kids are playing in their room with the door closed. The parents have been asleep for hours. And these kids are, up all hours, and then they're coming to school and they're falling asleep. They can't function. They aren't concentrating, and their grades are, going down. Another thing that just happened recently at Mercer, this mom, she didn't have an appointment or anything. She just came in, and she was pretty upset, and she started telling me about her 6th grader who is like crying on his way to school, kind of nauseous. He's put on a whole bunch of weight. And she was telling me lots of things that made me kind of think of autism spectrum disorder. But I just met him this week, and he is, he's this delightful kid. He's very verbal, he's very conversational. And all of a sudden, I'm asking him about what he likes to do on the weekend, and he tells me about this new game called Warframe and Fortnite and Gary's Mod, and he's just like lighting up telling me about all this stuff. And he's like, and there's this guy named Matt Pat who does this this YouTube series that is all about like commenting on the logic and the scientific accuracy of his games. He was like so excited to tell me all this stuff, and I said, well, how much do you play? And he said, I play for when I get home till dinner, and then after dinner until I go to bed. And so we kind of calculated up the hours, and it's like 5 or 6 hours a day, and that's on a school night. So on the weekends, he's probably playing more than that. And he, I think he's like, he smelled bad, I don't think he's not changing his clothes. He's just kind of, it's all about these games. And I think some of these kids, like, they spend their whole day thinking about getting back onto the games. And when you take the phones away from them, I've seen some really violent reactions at Mercer about getting the phones back. So, like, I started doing some research about what is going on with this, and like South Korea, which is probably the most connected country in the world, they have the gaming companies funding these treatment centers, and they have hundreds of treatment centers in Korea and in China. And I'm sure you probably read about that horrendous story about the family that was playing the virtual game that included a baby, and they let their own baby starve to death. I mean, there's some really unbelievable stories about these people who are really intense gamers. And so that's the exception. But I think that we are way behind in terms of recognizing this as a problem. And when I researched sort of what's in our area, it was like such amazing luck that there is a treatment center on the east side. And it's the only one in the country that's not hospital-based. and it's called Restart, and somebody else is going to talk about that. But so we went out there to visit, and then the woman who runs this place gave us like 6 hours of training videos, and so we watched those, and there are 2 pieces from the training videos that really stuck with me. Number one, that like the rates of depression and anxiety in these kids, when they are finished with the treatment program, it just disappears. Like those problems are kind of gone once these kids go through these treatment plans. And then number 2, which is like hard to even say, she often sees kids who have a porn addiction along with the gaming addiction. Those 2 go kind of hand in hand. And that you'd be hard pressed to find like a 12-year-old who has not watched online porn. So that is just something to, I think, for all of us to be thinking about and wondering whether it's like part of puzzle.
I have an 11-year-old. I don't want to hear that.
I know, I'm sorry. See something, say something. So, I mean, I've like kind of collected a lot of resources. I have gaming screeners that I've handed out to parents, and I've given them to kids too. And Hillary Cash, who runs this Restart Treatment Center, has a great book. I don't know what I did with it. I was going to bring it to show it. But,
Oh, 5 more minutes. Okay. Oh, I'm just gonna walk really quickly while someone talks. I'm sorry that this is distracting, but this is just like a little guideline for what kind of screen time that is age appropriate. And then I don't know if I have enough, so I'll kind of just turn really quickly around and then I will come back. Whoever wants one. Help me on the top. I can help pass out.
Are you doing the restart?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you talk about
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and talk about the Restart rehabilitation facility that she has brought up. So yeah, it's located in Monroe, and it's on 32 acres, and it's just a huge, beautiful sanctuary. I've gone to a lot of rehab places because I studied that as a UW. Addiction and drug, alcohol, that kind of stuff. So I've seen a lot of rehab places, visited a lot, and gone to like tons of AA meetings just as part of school to see, each one has their own little culture that they do. But this is, like she said, it's the first facility in the United States as compared to Korea, with them having they're all really organized, lots of rehab. We just have this one. And it is ran by Dr. Hillary Cashman, and she's the one, she's a well-known psychologist. She kind of operates out of the East Side, and she does tend to run groups of couples or people that are having like porn addiction issues that are adults. So now she's opened this center, the rehab facility Restart, it's for students aged 13 to 18, and it's like a huge, beautiful property. I don't know where she got the money to invest in it. I mean, she's good at making money. She has her own assessment tools that she published. I think that's one of them that was sent around to everybody to do the quiz. That was one of her batteries, and she's got a few of them out now. Some books she's written. So at Restart, it's Dr. Cashman and then all the other people that work there. They all have at least an MED, Masters in Counseling, and the counselors live there on the premises. And it's not like your typical rehab place. It's like a big, beautiful, I'm gonna call it a mansion, and it's just beautiful. The property is like looking at the rich and famous property, really. I mean, we all went out there. It was on November 1st. It was a beautiful sunny day. The grounds are all manicured. I mean, their staff, there's like a huge amount of people doing the landscaping. They have a private chef. I mean, that's just, I'll go into that in a minute, the amenities.
So it's not a cheap.
No. You gotta pay for the landscaping.
Let's
just say it's very
elitist. It's very beautiful. I would love to come here or to work there. The people that work there are all very happy. They live there, and they're all younger, in their 30s. I mean, they love it. And the guy that gave the tour, his name is Johnny Talk, and his background is residential, not residential, the wilderness programs for drug, alcohol is what he's done in the past. So he's kind of laughing about that. Guys, it's like another world doing this, and I mean, he's a good person for where they're at, 'cause it's all, woods, the North Cascades, it's overlooking the North Cascades.
I think it's good for people just to know that there is a program exists, so it is very expensive, no one would choose, like it's not.
$16,000 a month.
But people are desperate, right? And some, I mean, the situation is such that, people
Do
need
they
that
have
program.
scholarships available?
They're looking at that, but they don't, and it's boys only.
I can talk about $2,000 just to fill out the application fee. And it's another $35,000 just to.
It wouldn't be a program unless it was needed.
Then after
Wouldn't be
that,
a problem
need
for the
$17,000 a month.
wealthy, okay?
So you're looking at about 220,000 maybe.
Just to work really quickly, sorry,
Yeah.
that table that I just handed you off, that's from this Restart, so Dr. Hillary Cash combined with pediatrics, anyway. So we had sent a survey to you all, and about 30 of you responded, so thank you. And of that 30, question number 1, how many hours have you spent playing video games? 53 said no playing games, and then 46 have played about 1 to 3 hours or more a week. The second question was, have you or anyone in your family ever played multiplayer games? And 70% said yes, so then 30% said no. What do you think is the average number of hours per day spent by students in the 5th or 6th grade? 27% said 1 to 2 hours, 23% said 2 to 3 hours, 50% said more than 3 hours a day. And then market research actually shows that it's about 4.5 hours per day. This is for the UK market. And then other research says that 8.5% were clinically addicted from ages 8 to 18, and 2/3 of the youth felt addicted. Mostly they're males. And then kids ages 8 to 12 average about 16 hours a week, and then kids around 8 to 16 spend 18 hours a week. Number 4, the question was, is internet gaming addiction included in the DSM-5? And 40% said yes, 60% said no. And so far, no, it is not, but it is listed in the research appendix as a condition recommended for further study. The last question is, do you know anyone who may be overly dependent upon gaming? And 48% said very likely that they do know someone, 38% said likely, 10% said unlikely, and 4% said very unlikely.
2 people look at me.
So let me just say what I think this was
a couple questions.
Yeah, sorry to cut off. Just one question, please, and then we
I guess I was just curious how are they defining video game addiction? Is it like anything beyond these hours, or is it?
No, I think it's when you have seen that previously they were playing outside, they were doing other things. Like this kid told me that he's like, I used to feel bad when I didn't see my friends, but now I just feel bad when I'm not gaming because it's so much fun.
We have kids who refuse to eat lunch so they can go spend their entire lunchtime in the library so they can play Minecraft.
So it's an adaptive behavior thing is how we could look at it as. So they're losing school, what they should normally be doing to move on to a job or whatnot. No friends. They're either overeating or undereating. They're anxious, they tend to have ADHD, Asperger's, autism, that type of thing. All the people at Restart, the kids there now, there's only 8, but they all have medical diagnoses. They don't take any severe people. Yeah, so they all have high IQs and they're very socially isolated, and their sleep's disrupted. Everything you would think about like on an adaptive behavior scale we would do, it's going to show up glaringly.
Well, in this we introduced our topic, I think, to ourselves. Somebody found an article in the Atlantic Monthly. I think this, which is sort of a more broad-based view by this person, Jean Twing. It was from September 2017 in the Atlantic Monthly. And she really talks about, she studied generational changes, and she's been studying it for the past 25 years since she was 22 years old. And so she compares, so she looks at broadly.
I think you want to cut us off.
Sorry. I mean, we are running out of time.
Okay. I know.
3 other groups. Sorry. We have 3 other groups.
And then this is a great book. I'm just going to say I read this book. I talked about it, but it just basically talks about it's irresistible, about technology being irresistible, and it's made to be irresistible, so the game makers want you to be addicted.
If anybody has any students of Filthy Rich Families that want to go to Rich Cars, come on over, we'll give you
Next group, Tech in School. Next group will have half an hour for each group. Okay?
Yeah.
But it's a good resource, because a lot of them didn't even know that was an option. Okay. Your PowerPoint.
It's funny that we're doing apps, right, like technology.
Yo, that's what
I saw that.
I don't know scheduled it, but I was like, oh. Because the very, look at what our set, because one day machines will do our jobs. I was like, I couldn't believe those.
It lets you do like school psychology tools lets you do so it's under the folder that says school psychology apps on the iPad. It's on the iPad. But the school psychology tools has you can make a list. I only use initials, so that's confidentiality, but it is encrypted, so If you're not using the code or, one of the codes for the app, then you can use only initials for privacy purposes or confidentiality. For this purpose, I use fake or pseudonym, so that it's not a real student. I just wanted to let you guys can click on it to see the actual example of if you make a list of all your grade vowels, you'll have a list of, when are they due, easy access, initial student, who's next, kind of thing. So I really like those two apps. Those are the ones I beta tested all of the apps that are on the list that I emailed or that you're looking at on the list that I sent out or passed out, that we passed out. But those are the ones I've used the most, the school psychology tools and the PAR toolkit, just because I have access with the iPad to PAR Connect and also Q Interactive. So that's another app I use just because I'm using the iPad this year. And I think I'll talk later about some student apps because I've just learned about a math app I've already referenced or referred to other students and they're using it and it's successful.
So the MBST, the multi-behavior student tracking, is something that Ashley recommended last year. We just wanted to bring it up again. You did recommend it last year. I'm not imagining that. So you can just put in students' names and you can track behavior using different types of interval sampling, event recording, and momentary time sampling. And it's nice because it just vibrates when you need to document if the student's on task or off task. So you can kind of just be looking around, it vibrates, and then you can just quickly glance at the student, and that way you're not staring at them and then just hit the button.
And you can change the categories if you want different ones than the ones they have.
Yeah, and so these are obviously things more on task, and then there's red ones, and then there are the off task ones. So I think it's very useful. I use it a lot. You can do several and then email it to yourself, and it will find the average of all of them, and it spits out this nice data sheet. Another one that I really like is the Autism Speaks Special Needs Financial Planner. It just has a lot of information in there about local professionals. It has a lot of information about technical knowledge, a lot of information about what they need to do after high school, financial planning and things like that. I usually recommend it to special education teachers and then also parents who I feel are able to kind of get more information. Yeah, you can get the next one.
And that's the iPad as well on the little folder. Just a basic account to show you what the options are.
So this category is for teachers. So we have the Remind. It's a school communication app. You can send real-time messages to any phone. It can translate messages. You can share handouts. You can message a class, a person, or a small group, and you can set it up to send the message before the time too, so you don't have to be at 8 o'clock, put the phone away or whatever. You can just have that set up in there. We had a student who would not put his phone away, just like y'all were talking, and the special education teacher was kind of using that app to get him to use the phone less, and it worked a little bit at first for a while because it came up on his phone and he would be on his phone.
Away?
Yeah.
Okay.
It worked, but then his behavior kind of got worse over time again, went back. But I still think it could be good.
Teachers used it to say, hey, remember we have that test in the morning. I see it for general communication a lot more than for specific kids.
The
whole class.
Stress check.
Oh, so this one was one option. I think there's more on the following that would be recommended above this, because this is really just more monitoring. I think it's more helpful to have a tool to use to combat it than just your awareness.
I'm stressed.
Yeah.
Yay. Okay. Yeah, where'd it go? Just kidding.
So this one's for students, and the first one is Habitica, which is a game. I know we were just talking about games, but it's a game. It's a game that kind of tries to put a twist on students who are struggling to develop appropriate habits. So you put in habits that you want to do, like eat vegetables, cook a healthy meal, things like that. And it has an avatar, and you have health and experience, and you try to like get better. You try to improve your avatar. So I think that's really interesting. And then do you want to talk about PhotoMath or me?
Yeah, so the PhotoMath app is on the iPad, and what happens is you screenshot a math problem that you just are having problems with and don't know how to solve, and it'll intuitively like solve it for you and then show you step by step, and it's animated so that it'll show you, step 1 is, divide 300 by 20, 21 into 317. What are the steps? Step 1 is whatever number go into 217, how many times. And then it step by step lets you go, and then if you forget, it's there in the database so that you can go back and say, how did I solve that the last time? Because a lot of students, I've referred to students since I've learned about the PhotoMath, and they're actually using it, and their teachers are saying, they're more engaged. A couple weeks or so. Might be a novelty, but it's educationally replacing them looking at their phone for non-educational reasons with an educational purpose, right? That is its relevance. And I've sent it out to counselors to see if they will send it out to teachers and get some informal data on that to see if it actually is being accessed. But so far, only positive feedback.
Yeah, and I used it on the Wyatt, and it did all the problems correctly. I was like, I really, okay, that's amazing. And it's kind of interesting because there's problems on the Wyatt that I know the answer to, but didn't necessarily know how to do them.
That's the answer.
So that was kind of interesting to do. And then also my sister is an 8th grade math teacher, and I asked her about this, and she said she thinks it's a really good app, but the problem is that they're just using it to put in on the answers and not actually learn. Then obviously they can just take advantage of it. But because it breaks down all the steps, and you can you click it and it'll give you the next step. So it's it's not like you're looking at it's solved. You're looking at it step by step by step by step. So you can even go back and kind of see where the breakdown was. And then I don't know who recommended me study.
That was me, and it just is basically test prep for kiddos to actually, if they have different apps for math, algebra, specific math apps. It can be for science, just whatever area you want to double dip in if you're getting it. After school program, when you take this home with you and then get the main points from your after school program and take it home and study, or get notes from the teacher and combine that with what you learn in class and study, right? I've just sent out the list to teachers, so I don't have any feedback on that yet, but it looks promising. It's again replacing inappropriate focus to appropriate, actually studying. And just really quick, Duolingo is just, if you're taking Japanese or Spanish or something, they're accessing that at home, practicing. And SnapType, I think.
Well, the Duolingo is good because it's like a game, and you improve and things like that. And it's on your phone, and students love being on their phones. And then also SnapType.
SnapType is an app where you can take a picture of a document, and then you can type into it, get a spot where you want to write a comment or whatever, and the kids can, if they have assistive text.
Writing stand up. You can take a picture of the board and make a note.
Yep.
I did put that in the iPad as well.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. You might find it useful for yourself.
Parents do that at every curriculum night.
So these are a few different options for apps for emotional health, but out of these ones, the one that I liked the best that I trialed was Headspace. It's animated, and the person who is running the meditations has a really fun accent, which is a bonus. But it does cost money. So there's monthly subscriptions and annual, but you can also just trial it for free for a while. Go through some of the free promos.
I think that's the end of the PowerPoint.
Yeah. Can I add a really good emotional health one?
No.
Stop, Breathe, and Think.
Yeah,
It's a really good app, and that's free. They have free content and then a subscription, but I like
emphasis on
I also think that one too.
And then the Calm one is on the iPad, and that one has music and mindfulness exercises that you can. It's work related. it works for students, whole staff, and we can model the behavior, do it for a class lesson.
Ruler also has their own app.
Yeah, and you can plot your emotions.
You can, I like how it has like all the vocabulary on the coordinate plane.
Yeah. So one other thing that we talked about in the Tech PLC this year was how to be more efficient with writing reports. And something that I know Justin's worked on, and I have too, is using mail merge through Microsoft Word to you want to put in your observations and things like that, but that's a big like majority of your text written up for you. And so I made a video that goes and talks about it. It's 15 minutes long. We're not going to play it now, and my voice is annoying. So we don't need to watch that. But I'm going to send around the link to that video, so if you're interested, you might want to play with it. Something to do over the summer, because I'm sure you're going to be bored. Check it out. And yeah, I've been using it, and it helped. It's been saving a lot of time, especially writing up KTA or a WIAT. I've even got some for my pods going. So if you watch that and you still have questions, please feel free to shoot me an email, bug me. I'm happy to help you through that. So.
And it's really good at like preventing errors because you're not like retyping stuff over and over and over again. It's just like a template, and like she was saying, it auto-populates, and you can kind of like read over it, and that way when you type something out, like you read it sometimes right after it, and it just reads how you typed it. You were just thinking about it, but like actually having the template and being able to look back over everything is really helpful.
And I'm one of those people who will look at a table and be like, oh, they scored this in this percentile, and then I'll go to my report and be like, wait, what did I just read? And then I have to go and do that a few times. You get tired at the end of the day, so that saves a lot of time. And cut some corners, so check that out. I'll send the link around.
Thank you so much.
You like what I named your PowerPoint? I didn't have the cognitive load to come up with a title.
It works.
Okay.
Okay. Hello. So we're going to send around what are actually things we're and then the other thing is a little communication technique, which is at the end, and if we don't have enough time, though, it's on there. Okay. So, Masterminds and Wingmen by Rosalind Wiseman. She wrote Queen Bees and Wannabes, which I never read. But Mean Girls is the movie that it was based on. So she is a woman, and so how did she write about boys? So she collaborated with 150 to 200 middle and high school boy editors that she collaborated with and sent chapters to and ideas, and they would give her feedback, and a lot of that is included in the book, and it's very interesting. Okay, why should we care? So these are some statistics, and jump in at any time, that she lists. I think we all know this. Learning disabilities, suicide rates, correctional facilities. She also mentioned that I think it was 75% of valedictorians now are female, and rates of college, just going to college for boys, has been steadily decreasing. So.
Kind of day, isn't it?
So this really actually dovetails quite nicely with some of the information we've already heard, because
Why doesn't Batman ever smile?
So she has a chapter titled, Why Doesn't Batman Ever Smile? And so when she goes and does trainings at schools or does trainings with kids, she starts with this and asks them, how many of you know Halo Guy? I don't know if that's actually his name, that's what she calls him. And she said that literally every single place she goes, the boys will stand and cheer. Like they're so invested and entrenched in this culture, which I think we heard about, like that's just so much of their headspace. And so her idea too was kind of like, well, when they're little kids, it's Batman, right? And then they get a little bit older and it's Halo, and then it's Assassin's Creed. I don't know if Assassin's Creed, this was 5 years ago.
It's Fortnite right now.
It's Fortnite. I work in a middle school and it's Fortnite.
My nurse plays Fortnite. It's Fortnite.
I haven't played it, but
I'm going to try it out, see what happens.
Complimentary Wyatt essay.
Yes, I know. I told a 7th grader, he compelled me. I was going to give it a try.
I feel like I know how to play it. Today a kid was like, how do you spell pickaxe? So anyway, and this is a big reason why I was interested in this topic. I have a boy who's 9 and just working in middle school, and it's like, boys especially, it's just inexplicable sometimes their behavior. So anyway, so her point is the limited emotional range of these characters and how they don't really provide any guidance or modeling of how to deal with things. So you know, if their parents are going through divorce or they just got dumped, we don't know how they would act.
We know what Batman would
partly
do.
how they would act. Okay, so this is a big construct in her book. So I want everybody to think about a guy who is popular, he influences people, he has high social status. Okay? All right.
I mean,
I know.
Why are you influencing us with your...
Sorry.
No, okay, Ashley, go ahead.
Oh, I went Barack Obama. I have a feeling we didn't go with the same person.
Oh, interesting.
You're on the other end of the spectrum.
Interesting. So
I'm trying to go for positive right now. You guys are bringing me down.
Well, but so keep in mind when she does this, it's with adolescent boys. Okay.
Michael Phelps.
So all right, go ahead, Ashley. We're gonna find out what.
What is he like?
No, I mean.
Sorry. I started pushing buttons. I thought maybe I could do something.
So
Whoa.
this is what. No, that's fine.
Okay.
So this is what, you know, and.
Good with girls.
General,
It's totally what I would have said. Oh. Good at comebacks. Detached. Interesting.
And I will say that there's definitely, you know, in terms of demographics, I got the feeling from her book that it was a pretty white middle class, but we don't know, like she doesn't list the demographics, so, but she says she goes to all types of different schools and settings, so. Okay, now, think about, I think that one, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, that's right. Think about a guy who doesn't have high social status. What some descriptors might be. Okay.
Oh. That makes me so mad. But yeah, as a mother of 2 boys,
Yeah.
I'm battling that conversation all the time.
But that's what I liked about this book was that it was really honest about what boys actually think and say. And a lot of her collaboration, I think, was over email, and so I think the boys were pretty honest because there's some separation there.
They're generally pretty honest.
Yeah. So, okay. So she calls this the act like a man box, and that's a big part of the book is it's a box, it's hard to get out of, it's hard to get into, and that this is kind of the paradigm that a lot of our boys are working with. Okay.
Rule follower. That's interesting. Yeah, middle school. Hello.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is, again, based on her research. I resisted the urge to make a normal curve.
You didn't want to make a triangle?
Well, I did want to make a triangle, but it didn't work. But this is pretty intuitive. I think, you got your 10%er popular kids who kind of all follow
a similar playbook, and then the bottom rung, and then the majority of us are probably somewhere in the middle. But then you have the outer perimeter, anarchists, pranksters, politicians. It reminded me of that from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Can you say it?
Secretary. No, can you?
Dweebos.
Yeah, your
Buzzhead. Oh man.
something heads.
Yeah,
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's the outer perimeter.
With the like 27 pencils in her hair.
You realize you've all just dated yourselves terribly.
That's fine. No matter how old I get, Dr. Wood, I will still be younger
It's
than you.
true. It's absolutely true. But an interesting thing about this too, coming from the boys, was like, this is not a bad place to be. That it's kind of like they all recognize where they fit in, but as long as they have at least one strong friendship, these boys report that they're happy and well-adjusted. So from the outside looking in, we as parents and educators might worry about that, and that was something that came up, like, my parents want me to go to more parties or blah, 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 and they're like, but I'm fine. So that was kind of an interesting takeaway. Okay. All right, here's where I'm dating myself more, Dr. Wood. I was going to do Reservoir Dogs, but then I realized at least half of
What
them
about the
have
Outsiders?
No idea. You know what? I just watched The Outsiders again. Okay. All right, so Masterminds and Wingmen, you get the idea. So in the book, another big idea is the roles that the different guys play in their cliques. Okay. So regardless of where they are in the social hierarchy, boys tend to be in groups of 5 to 8 and fall into one of these. I'll just let you read it. We can all probably think of people who fit these. I'm just curious for grown men in the room, does this resonate at all, or does it?
It resonates with me.
And one way she talks about this is like that there's pros and cons for each role. That usually there's a benefit, but she said the fly is the one there's really no benefit for that kid. Like that's just kind of, you know.
Does she talk about like whether they're aware of like? Because I often wonder like how could they not be perceiving how everybody thinks about.
I think that they are, but I don't think they necessarily realize what they're losing or gaining by doing that. And I think they can be a different role in different groups too. But one of her points is that this is a good thing for parents and teachers to know, partly like when this behavior happens, that it's like, what was he thinking? Well, if he's playing one of these roles, he's got this whole social world that he's focusing on. This one was funny because one of the boys said in an email, I don't think you should include that because every parent is going to think that's their son. And, you know, guilty. But, you know, he might not be. Or this one. It's like champion or... Okay.
5 more minutes.
Okay, perfect. So one, she has lots, I mean, I really recommend the book. She has a lot of very concrete, down-to-earth suggestions. She has a chapter entitled Reconnaissance and Lying about how to deal with your teenage son and his habits. I mean, there's some really good ideas, like say you're going to go out to a movie and then come back an hour early and see who's at your house and what they're doing. It was pretty sobering. Okay, so this is a technique that can be used, well, anyone can use it, but boys can use it with peers, they can use it with adults. The example she gave in the book was actually a boy talking to his dad. I can't remember what the situation was, but he
decided to do it during a commercial break, during a football game. And it worked. Like, that's how short it is. So it's really just, stop, set it up, think about when, is this a good time to have this conversation? What happened? What did you want to happen instead? And then affirming and acknowledge that you have the right to be treated with dignity, or that you're standing up for someone else and they do. And then lock in and decide if you still want to continue the relationship and on what terms. And I think this could be really helpful for that kind of like locker room talk discussion about other boys kind of stepping up and saying something, either then or later, but just a very short like, hey, and then just following this so that they've said their piece. And yeah, any questions? Yes.
Did she do any intersectionality or cross-referencing family roles that are inherent and how they might translate into these social roles for peers?
Yeah, she talked a lot about, so the thing we handed around, parenting profiles, so she talked a lot about that, like the mastermind that he may tend to have parents who are more, I mean, it's kind of stereotypical, but I guess it's true, like parents that are more invested in their son's social success. So yeah, she kind of had like different ways of looking at that different types of boys have, reliably different types of parents, which of course, I'm sure there are exceptions, but yeah.
So I'm wondering if so I get the archetypes and I get how perhaps the book is saying that boys oftentimes thrive in roles, right? But did the book also say then that sometimes situations put specific boys into those roles, or is that covered at all?
Yes. I'm not sure how to respond to that.
Short answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of the point, is like for them to learn that that's happening. And so that's part of like this technique too, is to kind of say, hey, whenever we're out, you make fun of me or whatever, like to negotiate those things so that it's not quite so set. But yeah.
More comment. There's a documentary coming out called The Masculine that is about masculinity and how society shapes boys and how it affects them in school and their learning and all these different things. And they're having a free screening of it on next Wednesday at Naked City Brewing. You just have to go to their website and log on.
At what brewing?
Naked City Brewing. It's in Greenwood.
Okay.
There's going to be another one in May, which I don't know when that is or where it's at a church somewhere.
I think we've shown you at a brewery.
I also have that DVD and that curriculum if anybody wants to borrow it. The curriculum, I think I could just email out. It's pretty good. It has lots of different activities that you can have with boys from elementary through high school. In the DVD, you will just have to borrow the DVD because it's not an electronic version.
Yeah, we've used it at Madison, I know, during like the Finding Kind, anti-bullying, and yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you so much.
All right.
It's positive. So it's things like calm, contentment, happiness, those kind of things. And we read a book called Hardwiring Happiness by Rick Hansen. And he talks a lot about mindfulness and savoring. And so we're going to start with a video on mindfulness and how it's being used in the schools. And this is a video made with 6-year-olds explaining how they're using it. So, kindergarten students. She pronounced it correctly. She did not.
So some of the teachers are using this with Grover, and they're reporting good results. In fact, some of the kids are even asking for it when they're upset. They need to calm down. They're asking to. Good. It's been really positive. And again, the book we read was Hardwiring Happiness, and he talks about using different types of mindfulness, like a routine practice of 10 minutes or more a day, and how that affects your brain. So you can, depending on how, using what technique you use, and scanning for the positive can be used to change your brain, change the actual neurostructure of your brain to change your mind. And we have another video, another short video to show you what you're doing.
I actually have that video I show as part of my health lesson. I didn't even realize that that was one of the ones you were going to show, Wendy. So I show that to my 6th graders. And one of the teachers at Eagle Staff makes jars. Does Dawn have those still? This is positive. Here.
anyway, I think the research is really fascinating. He's written a lot of books. He's got a lot of videos online.
I was just gonna.
I'm not making the noise.
Okay, I was gonna review the book really quickly. I think it's a beautiful book, and there's a lot of simple lessons in there. Wendy suggested both the author and the book, and it turned out to be a great read. I think one of the best things about it is I can distill the important information to you all in a few minutes. As he said, the real practice and hard work is consistently doing it every day, right? So he has the book broken down, and I gave out handouts. This is essentially exactly what I'm going to say. He broke up the book into the why and the how. And so for the why, he talks about experience-dependent neuroplasticity, right? So our brain changes from a young age and also in older age according to our experiences, right? You can, neurons that wire together, fire together. We know use it or lose it, right? And so he says we should harness this power to literally pave pathways of positivity in our brain. With small amount of time given to this every day, he argues, and I think there's a lot of research suggesting you can do this. So he sets the context in evolutionary psychology, right? And so in the evolutionary environment of our ancestors, we were a lot better off paying attention to the risks, right? Making sure we had enough food, making sure there were no social threats to us, right? Are there any animals on the savannah that are going to come attack us? And because of that, we've had a baked-in negativity bias into our brain. And we operate out of that. And he likened it to Velcro versus Teflon, where our brain is readily looking for negative experiences to integrate into our long-term memory and our general sense of self. But positive experiences, you need a lot more effort to put them in your brain, to integrate them into you as a person. And then he goes on to talk about the two general modes that the brain is in. Most complicated mammals and our evolutionary ancestors, he argues, are in this green brain. He calls a responsive mode, where we can flexibly solve problems, where we can have a stress response, but then get rid of it pretty quickly, right? But unfortunately, due to the constant mild to moderate stressors in everyday life, right? We have stressors all day, every day. We aren't able to move, we aren't able to stay in that. We are stuck in this kind of red brain, this reactive mode, where we have tunnel vision. We lose sense of, our big pictures. We can't react to things. Our stress hormone goes through the roof. And so this is the why, right? That he has an argument for a recipe, how we can move from the red brain to be more in the green brain most of the time. I think it's funny that he has an acronym, right? HEAL, and y'all were covering SEAL. But so he has a 4-step acronym, HEAL. Have a positive experience, enrich it, absorb it, and then the third step, or the fourth step is, I think, a bit more tenuous, and he says it's much harder to do, but he says eventually if you practice the first 3 steps, you can start to get rid of negative experiences, overwrite them with the positive by linking the positive experiences to the negative. He has a lot of ideas about how to increase the salience of positive experiences, right? So we all know humans like novelty, like personal relevance. If you can increase the duration or intensity that you spend with positive experiences, you have more chance of integrating those into your sense of self. And he also talks about multimodality. So can you picture, can you feel, can you taste as you experience? And so I was just going to read through those steps just so you can get a sense of him. And he writes kind of flowery. He's a beautiful writer, I think. But it also gives you a sense of the spirit of maybe how you can linger with these things, how you can appreciate all of the facets of it. So step 1, have a positive experience. And you all can feel free to do this as I speak. Notice a positive experience that's already present in the foreground or background of your awareness, such as a physical pleasure, a sense of determination, or feeling close to someone. Or create a positive experience for yourself. For example, you could think about things for which you're grateful. Bring to mind a friend, or recognize a task that you've completed. As much as you can, Help ideas like these become emotionally rewarding experiences. Otherwise, it's merely positive thinking. So that's the H. Step 2, enrich it. Stay with the positive experience for 5 to 10 seconds or longer. How many of us do that, right? We all have a positive thing. That food tasted good. I ate it so fast. What's next, right? Stay with the positive experience for 5 or 10 seconds or longer. Open to the feelings in it and try to sense it in your body. Let it fill your mind. Enjoy it. Gently encourage the experience to be more intense. Find something fresh or novel about it. Recognize how it's personally relevant, how it could nourish or help you, or make a difference in your life. Get those neurons really firing together so that they'll wire together. And then step 3, absorb. Let it intend and sense that the experience is sinking into you, and you sink into it. So he uses a lot of visualization for this. Let it really land in your mind. Perhaps visualize it sifting down into you like a golden dust, or feel it easing you like a soothing balm, or place it like a jewel in the treasure chest of your heart. Know that the experience is becoming part of you, a resource inside you that you can take with you wherever you need to go. And then, you can read more of his book if you're interested in learning a bit more, but honestly, that's most of what the book was about. So, and I think Anne-Marie was going to speak about school-related things, but she's not here, so sorry.
She had some apps. There's an app called Happify and Smiling Minds. So if you have questions about the apps, you can ask those. Any questions? No, we actually have some extra time left.
What to do with those 4 whole minutes?
May I make a suggestion?
Now resonate. We finished early.
The air circulation is kind of getting a little, so we might want to,
So thank you very much. We'll see you
Thanks.
in May.
I'm not calling 911 today, so.
Not today.
Not today.
He's gonna save that for, I don't know.
Hang on.
Wendy,